I have no idea why, but I am so bad with these intros. But what I do lack in intros, I make up for in great game selections. I absolutely love indie video games, and there's such a wide list of well-known and popular ones that are well deserving of their praise. But here's a list of 10 other lesser-known titles that absolutely blew me away and I believe deserve more credit. So let's just jump in. This is one of the most confusing ones for me. How this game is not up there with some of the best is wild. This is the definition of the hidden gem. The Messenger is an 8-bit 2D side-scrolling action platformer where you play as an anonymous ninja trying to deliver a scroll. And while this may seem like a pretty standard linear experience paying some homage to NES games, just at the thought of when you might slightly be bored and wondering what else this game may have to offer, boom, it switches to a 16-bit Metroidvania. You gain new abilities, movements are different, and the tempo has completely changed in the best way possible. Also, the writing in the game I found to be absolutely superb and hilarious. The game also has an absolute banger of a soundtrack and really stunning visuals with really cool boss battles. The only slight negative I have towards it is that it might not be the absolute best Metroidvania, because the backtracking can feel definitely tedious at times. But all in all, I think this package is an absolute steal if you love these kinds of games. It feels like the one you play for a few hours and you get a sequel halfway through. Just a really unique experience overall, and I could not recommend it more.
The kingdom needs a hero with a will cast of iron.
Man, I could talk about this one for a long time. Tales of Iron is a 2D action RPG with Souls-like elements where you play as Reggie, who is heir to the Rat Throne. And after an invasion of the Frog Clan and a devastating attack, Reggie must fight back to reclaim his throne. And I am telling you right now, this game has the freaking sauce. First of all, let's talk about the hand-drawn animation. It is absolutely incredible. All of the character models, world, bosses look so incredible. And while this pulled me in, the brutal combat and engaging storytelling is what kept my hands gripped to the controller for the entire playthrough. As far as the story goes, I did not expect to love it as much as I did. And if you needed any more convincing, the narrator for this game is Doug Cockle, who voices Geralt in The Witcher. Not even 15 minutes into playing it, I was completely sucked in by this world and these characters. I completed this game 100% and got my Platinum Trophy on PlayStation, doing every side quest this game had to offer because I just loved this world and these characters so much. Now, the combat is what is even more engaging, but do be warned, it can be brutal. This plays out similar to a Souls game with a light and heavy attack. You've got your dodge and roll, healing flasks of course, but these refill from the juice of your enemies. You may have many different weapons, shields, armors to choose from and mix and match to your preferred playstyle. The bosses are all super unique, fun, and again, they offer a great challenge if you love that. And to top it all off, this game is like $25, it's Steam Deck verified, and it has come with numerous free DLCs, just offering hours of content that is well worth your money. If you're into Souls-likes, good storytelling, and fun gameplay, I literally could not encourage you more to pick up Tales of Iron. Now, this game is a little different than the rest. I would consider this one much more known than most of the others, but I still put it on here because I don't think we talk enough about this game for how good it truly is. Nikina is an action-adventure game with a focus on platforming and really fun combat. You play as a young spirit guide in search of the sacred mountain shrine. With the help of your rot companions, you will free the trapped villagers in the Forgotten Forest. And again, right off the bat, I absolutely adore this game's art style. It feels like you're playing through a freaking Pixar movie. It is awesome. This game has really good voice acting as well, an engaging story, and just an all-around great presentation. The game also ran flawlessly my entire playthrough on PS5. But do not let the cute art style fool you, because this game is freaking brutal. Some of the bosses can be a real challenge, and I've also beaten this game 2 times. If you're looking for a real challenge, definitely try hard mode. It is not for the freaking weak. These bosses will really test test your skills, and the final boss gave me so much grief. But the combat is just so much fun, and using your staff, bow, and different rod abilities through your skill tree, there's just a great amount of enemy variety here to keep the entire thing fresh and engaging as well. The game isn't too terribly long, which is not even remotely an issue for me, but I think it took me around like 15-ish hours to roll credits, and maybe stretch this to like 20 or so if you want to do everything, including the Platinum Trophy. The soundtrack is also absolutely amazing, and this game really just has so much charm to it. It's just an absolute blast, and I feel this game deserves so much more respect than it receives. This is also another one that I find extremely confusing, because it combines the likes of games like Little Nightmares, Limbo, and Inside, some of the most popular indie games out there. But I swear, I saw a lot of hype based around the initial trailers, especially on like short form content, but once this thing dropped, not a word from anyone. And it's a dang shame, because again, this game completely rips. Bramble the Mountain King is an action-adventure game based on old Nordic fables, and you play as Ole, whose sister has been captured, and you go on a mission to rescue her. Looking at the visual presentation, I absolutely love this game's art style. It's just so creepy, and there are so many sections of the game that are just downright disturbing, but it all serves a purpose. And as you would expect from a game like this, the soundtrack is absolutely killer. But it was very surprised by the storytelling, and I thought this was absolutely one of the strongest aspects. After these large encounters with some of the game's creatures, you will often find a diary of some sort of explanation of their backstory, and some of them were very heartbreaking. But one of my absolute favorite aspects in this game were the boss battles. One of them specifically was one of the most unique ones I think I've played in years. They're all so unique, detailed, and there's even a small amount of combat thrown into there as well, which it's not like you just run away from everything. This is also similar to Little Nightmares as far as its length. It's very short, but it is honestly kind of fitting for this kind of game. It really doesn't overstay its welcome. If you love Little Nightmares, horror games with great storytelling and world building, please check out Bramble. I promise it deserves your attention. Tunic is so freaking special and wonderfully unique in my opinion. This is an action-adventure game very inspired by the early Legend of Zelda games, and will test both your skills in combat and in puzzles. This game tells you next to nothing. There's no dialogue spoken, no objective markers either. All you have are broken pages of this booklet that you need to piece together, and they will give you the answers that you seek. I think that is where I first thought this game was absolutely brilliant, because exploration will only take you so far in this game early on, but there will inevitably be a point where you hit a wall and you're stuck, and the answers to your question reside in that booklet. I mean, there are literally things you can access from the very start of the game that you need to do to progress later on, but you do not have the knowledge on how to access it, and this booklet is that key. I also think the art style, once again, world are just absolutely beautiful, and the combat can be a downright challenge, but it's very intense, and I think this game has some really memorable boss encounters. Soundtrack also slaps. This is just an absolute gem. There's also no difficulty setting in here as well, so you better be prepared. If you love a game full of secrets, and I mean tons of secrets, then look no further than Tunic. I promise this game is one that you will remember for a long time. Insound might not be a game for everyone, but it absolutely was for me. I remember I looked at this game over and over again due to the box art alone. I had never seen a trailer, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I just had an incredible time. This is a first-person psychological horror game that has you playing through a therapist, going through your patient's minds. Kind of similar to Psychonauts, where each level is actually based on that person. You'll grab different tapes, which are the recordings of your sessions, and you will play them back, which is what each level is based around. An insanely cool premise in my opinion. And this is primarily a narrative experience with several puzzles involved and even some boss encounters. Now, none of the boss encounters were too memorable in my opinion, and some of the puzzles were okay, but the narrative kept me fairly engaged. There was also surprisingly a decent amount of combat and even weapons beyond just the typical pistol. It kind of plays out like a Metroidvania as well. I also know horror is extremely subjective, but I found several moments of this game pretty scary and offered a great amount of suspense. And also, the soundtrack was done by the Living Tombstone, and yeah, it's as awesome as it sounds. They did phenomenal work and just really added to the overall vibe of the game. This is also a relatively short experience, once again, never overstays its welcome. If you go in with an open mind, I think you'll really dig this one. So Owlboy was apparently 10 years in the making, and I had somehow never heard about it. This was another one of those ones I bought on a whim due to the art style, it was cheap, and I was very happy I did. This is an action platformer with a pretty heavy emphasis on its narrative, but with beautiful pixel art. The visuals in this game are absolutely top notch. It literally reminds me of like a Studio Ghibli film. There are just tons of heart in this world and story. I thought the gameplay was very fun and unique, flying around, and the movement, it all felt great. You had to pick up your friends to use them as gunners. I thought it was all well executed. I also felt the story played out really well. I was relatively invested overall. It had lots of memorable locations, set pieces, and boss battles that really took me by surprise, especially in the way you have to tackle them. I thought there was a great amount of variety. It absolutely has Metroidvania elements as well. I'm just a sucker for that. Again, got a relatively short experience, around 10-ish hours, but I loved every second of it. Supergiant Games is an absolute powerhouse right now in the world of indie games. They've made absolute masterpieces like Hades 1 and 2, Pyre, Transistor. While Hades is the one that absolutely has put them so far on the map, I always felt like Bastion was the black sheep, never truly getting the love it deserves. Transistor is still my favorite Supergiant game to date, but man, what a game Bastion is. As every Supergiant game, the visuals absolutely pop off the screen. The combat is ridiculously fun, fast-paced, and very engaging. Lots of upgrades to be had for many different weapons to keep replayability high. One of the best aspects is the story, and especially how it's told. It has this reactive narrator that goes along with whatever you're doing in-game. I found this incredibly unique and just, again, added layers to the overall storytelling. It might sound like it could start to be annoying to some, but I promise it is really well done. The environments are very interactive and again, just as beautiful as always. But as in most of their games, the soundtrack absolutely steals the show and just adds a layer to this game that's hard to replicate or put into words. It definitely helps this game stand out by far amongst others, and Darren Korb, again, is just doing masterful work that is just unheard of in the video game industry. I highly recommend checking out every single one of Supergiant games regardless, but make sure to check out Bastion. It rules. Year after year, we get video games exploring the concept of war, and it always feels so cool. Fighting Nazis in World War II, going in guns blazing, tossing freaking mortars everywhere like a true soldier. What if there was a game that explored the concept of war, but instead of in the eyes of a soldier and heroes, it was through the eyes of civilians and how it affects their day-to-day life? That is the entire concept of this war of mine. Developed and published by 11-Bit Studios, I will never forget the first time playing this game. I was completely shattered. I mean, I was depressed, and I'm not even being remotely hyperbolic. I had no clue how much your decisions actually impacted this story. You have to go find and scavenge things, take care of your people, make sure you have enough food and water. Are you going to rob the elderly couple for their bandages, or rob someone and kill them in the middle of the night for supplies? The very first time I played, I robbed this older couple because I'm kind of used to games having little consequences. Overnight, my crew found out what I did, and they resented me for it. And after the next morning, they all left me. My character was the only one with almost no food left. I went to bed for the night, and I woke up and my game told me my character had hung himself. Roll credits. I was speechless, but incredibly hooked. Now, I actually got the chance to visit 11-Bit Studios in Poland to check out their upcoming games, The Altar and Frostpunk 2, and I can tell you firsthand, this team just has such a passion for games that are just different, with great stories, and are not afraid to shatter you emotionally. If you love survival games with lots of decisions to make that actually matter, and ones that have real impact, I could not recommend this war of mine more. I almost never hear anybody mention or talk about Nobody Saves the World, and in my opinion, that's a crime. Developed by Drinkbox Studios, yes, the same people who made Guacamelee, another fantastic game, mind you, is an action RPG where you play as nobody, who comes across magic that allows him to transform himself into many different creatures, like a bodybuilder, an archer, even a freaking horse. All the gameplay for each of these is wildly different, and they have all many different upgrades to unlock. It gets even more fun when you can start mixing and matching these different abilities as well. I promise the gameplay is completely addicting. The game just has so much charm charm and style. The story and dialogue, they're both ridiculous and hilarious, extremely fitting for the world. There are lots of quests to do for different people, and there's just an overall great package that deserves far more credit than it's received. But yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know in the comments of some of your favorite indie games and ones you think deserved more credit, as I would love to continue this series, check out new games. I always love trying new games I've never played before.